Well, Raider Nation, we said they could not lose to Shedeur Sanders, and somehow they found a way to do just that today. Now, obviously, Shedeur wasn't the only reason they lose this game. Their offensive line was like Swiss cheese. They gave up 10 sacks on the day. That's 20 sacks in the last 3 games for the Raiders. Just an unbelievable number. There's no way in the world anybody would have thought this offensive line could have been that bad. Yes, they're dealing with injuries, but you cannot be that ridiculously bad along the offensive line. There's no quarterback in the NFL that would play well behind that. Geno Smith is actually now the first quarterback since Jeff George in 1998 to take 10 sacks in a game. That's a long, long time ago, guys. And obviously, this is one of those games where all of us at the press box are sitting there saying this is probably one of the worst ones we've seen in our time here covering the Raiders, at least in Las Vegas. This team overall, probably the worst team I've covered since they've moved here to Vegas. I covered them in their last season in Oakland. And, man, this one's been hard to watch. Today, one of those ones where I know a lot of fans, a lot of you guys at home probably asking yourself, where the heck do we go from here? And we'll get to that eventually. But first, obviously, want to talk about the offensive line. There were signs of life for this offense early on in the game. And as Chip Kelly and a lot of the staff has said many times, there are just so many self-inflicted wounds game in and game out. They get, it's like 2 steps forward and 3 steps back, which is always the most ridiculous thing in the world when you're sitting there watching it and covering this team, no matter who the coach is, no matter who the players are. I mean, you go back and look at that screen to Genti, they pick up a chunk there, and then Putnam gets the holding call. Then Parham gets a holding call later on. In the first quarter, if I remember right, I counted 3 penalties on offensive linemen alone. It's just insane. If you go back and if you just look at the first half stats, I mean, they were playing behind the chains so often. It's not even funny. They were 1 for 9 on third down. Their average distance to go on third down was 14.3 yards. That's because they were averaging 3.7 yards per play in the first half, and they had given up 5 sacks. They gave up 5 sacks in both halves of this game. Just an unacceptable number. It's insane. And really the thing that stood out to me is the delayed blitzes were giving them a lot of issues. We saw the one by Delpit. A couple plays later, they actually ran the same play with a delayed blitz by Delpit. And as a lone positive, Ashton Genti did a really good job picking that one up. I thought he fared pretty well in pass protection. But again, on the day, this Browns D-line, we talked about it coming to this one. I believe they were tied for 4th in the league in sacks. Obviously, we know about Myles Garrett. We know about Malik Collins and Mason Graham. All 3 of those guys were top 15 in the league at their position in pass rush win rate. Obviously, they put that on display today. The thing that gets me, too, in this one is the way that they continuously handle the offensive line. It's crazy. We talked to Pete about it. A lot of guys were pretty pissed off about it. I saw you guys on Twitter talking about it in terms of the way that they handled it. Again, one, they roll out the same offensive line combo that they had in the last game against the Cowboys, the one that gave up, I believe it was 4 sacks. Still not their worst performance because they surpassed that today. But that unit comes out today and drops the ball in a big way. They had Putnam back at center. He wasn't benched. We talked to Pete afterwards. Apparently he tweaked his ankle. But instead of throwing Caleb Rogers in at right guard and moving Meredith back to center, well, what do? They bring in Alex Cappa to play center for them, a guy who is, to my knowledge, at least going back through PFF during the game and trying to look at his snap counts at every position along the offensive line, has never played a snap at center in the NFL. Even in college, he was a tackle at Humboldt State. I asked Pete after the game when Kappa started taking snaps at center. He said it was recently. He wouldn't give me an exact timeline on when they did, but he said if something were to happen, if they would have to shuffle things around, that was their plan all along, is to put Kappa in there at center. And I'll be honest, I thought Kappa fared better than Putman did overall, but Putman ends up coming back into the game, after Jordan Meredith goes down, and then they put Kappa at right guard, putting him back at center. Again, just wild. The way that they just will not give Caleb Rogers a shot is insane to me. I don't believe that he had that bad of a week in practice. That was obviously the story that was going all around. We've all talked to people. There's no way it could be that bad that you don't trust your third-round pick that much in a game like this or a game like the Cowboys. Again, just a head-scratcher of a move in the way they've been handling it with him. Their unwillingness to play young guys is crazy. You could even see it. I don't know if they showed it on the broadcast, but Caleb Rogers was warming up, started walking out onto the field like he was ready to play, and they had him go back. I just don't get why you won't give this guy a shot at some point. Again, we're only there for a short period of time at practice right now at this point. During training camp, we're there for everything. We get to see it all. During the season, we're there for a short window, so we don't get to see exactly what happens. But there's no way he was that bad. If he was, then you failed drafting a guy like that. I just don't believe that he's that bad, especially, again, when you go look at this offensive line, as I want to reiterate, that gives up 20 sacks in 3 games. There's no way it can get worse than that. I feel for Geno. I know a lot of you guys get on him, and he has some ownership of some of these sacks, too. Don't get me wrong. He's sitting there taking some extra hitches, patting the ball, maybe not getting it out as fast as he should, and we'll get to that in terms of some of the deep shots that they took today. But as an offensive line, you have to protect your quarterback. Pete noted that afterwards. And it's tough for an offensive coordinator and a quarterback and an offense as a whole to get going if your offensive line is playing that poorly. And, again, also committing penalties. Like I said, I counted 3 penalties by the offensive line in the first quarter alone. I didn't do it for the entire game. I started losing track after that. But just unreal. And to be honest, like, I know a lot of us have been going in on Chip Kelly, and this is one of those games where I can't really go in on him too much. I had said so many times that we needed to see more screens from the Raiders in the passing game. Well, they tried to do that again here, and they got chunk plays in that regard a couple times, trying to keep that Browns D-line off balance. You know, they mixed in the run a bit more. They did try to take their deep shots, and they were actually there. Geno Smith just couldn't connect with Trey Tucker on a handful of times. And again, that goes back to Geno being more accurate in some of the situations. I think the one in the corner of the end zone, I'm actually standing in the end zone where it was. It was right to my left over here. And I think there's 2 sides of that one. Yes, Trey Tucker needs to run more to the pylon and make it easier on his quarterback to make that throw. I think you also need, by Geno Smith, instead of sitting on it, let that thing rip and let your guy go run under it to the pylon there. I think there's blame on both sides. But then Trey Tucker later, Geno hits him there as he's rolling right. Would have been the first down, and he drops the ball. Following play, goes back at it. Trey's clearly dead. He's been running sprints on that entire drive, and Geno misses him there. Just one of those deals where you've got to be more accurate. And then Geno went on to say afterwards, like he has many times, put it on me. He's got to make the plays, all those things. Look, he's saying the right things, and I know at times it's kind of tongue-in-cheek. There's only so much you can do, with this offensive line, and so I feel for him. I really do. And any quarterback that would have to play behind an offensive line like this. So somehow they need to figure out a way to get it going. I think for starters, just like clean it up, play clean football on offense and see where that takes you. You know what I mean? Again, they're just not able to get into a rhythm at all because there's all these steps back, whether it's the sacks or the simple fact of the holding calls and the penalties and things like that. If you clean that up, I'd really love to see what this offense for the Raiders actually looks like when they can start to call things and get it moving. And we got a bit of a taste of it, I guess, in the game against the Jaguars. But even then, they didn't light the world on fire. But they did score 29 points. But since then, it's been all downhill. It's been tough sledding for the offense. Like we said, they took their deep shots. They were there today. They just could not connect and could not get on the same page. And it's a frustrating thing for this offense because, to me, look, this defense is playing winning football. For the 8th time this season, they have forced a 3-and-out on the first drive of the game for the opposing offense. That leads the NFL. The offense has squandered like all of those opportunities as far as I can remember. So they've been playing so great to start this game. And if you could just score on that first drive and help your defense out, that's going to help on the offense and obviously take some of the heat off of the defense there. And the offense has just not shown the ability to do that. And for you guys at home, I'm sure it's frustrating. For the guys on the defense, I know it is. Max noted that they could have played better. We talked to him afterwards. Again, he's saying all the right things, and he said it sucks because now you're not playing for the playoffs and all those things. But he said there's some ownership on the defense. And, look, there's been some conversations that I've had where it's like it almost seems like the defense gives up just enough points for the team to lose. And, again, there is some truth to that. But this Raiders offense has been so bad. You cannot have Chip Kelly in there as the offensive coordinator and score this few points week in and week out. I know you guys have been calling for Brendan Carroll's job for quite some time. I'm not the guy to sit there and call for people's jobs. However, when you give up 20 sacks in 3 weeks, you fire your special teams coordinator. I don't know how another move doesn't need to be made, specifically in that offensive line room. I know it's Pete Carroll's son. I know that's a tough one to make. You can tell each and every week how much this eats at Pete Carroll. Excuse me, guys. I'm getting over the tail end of a cold here. It's been a rough couple of weeks for me in terms of the health front there. But you can tell it's weighing on him each and every time he comes in, real deep breaths. Anytime someone mentions the record, it's like a punch in the gut to him. And again, I know it's your son. One of the things you sign up for if you bring your son on staff is the fact that you're going to have to make some tough decisions. At some point, the Raiders need to make a decision here along that offensive line in terms of the coaching in that room. Things did look better last year when Philbin took over. I don't know how you don't make a move. Something's got to happen. That's the chatter amongst all of us here at Allegiant Stadium today. Something has to happen. And again, we talked about it last time on this podcast following the last loss of the Cowboys. So many times Pete Carroll is coaching like a guy that's coaching to not lose his job rather than coaching for the future, coaching like a guy that feels like he's got a runway and can build to the future and all that stuff. So it's just been real curious to see. Now, after the game, Ryan McFadden from ESPN did ask Pete something to the effect, and this wasn't the exact wording of it, I don't want to put words in Ryan's mouth, but he asked something to the effect of asking him essentially, would they consider playing the young guys more going forward? That's kind of what he was saying behind the question. And Pete said, we'll get together, we'll look at where we're at, and we'll discuss that. Obviously not something fans want to hear. They want a definitive yes or a no. To me, that sounds like as soon as they figure out that they're mathematically eliminated from the playoffs, and I'll be honest, I don't know if they are just yet. I know the Giants recently just got mathematically eliminated. If the Raiders aren't already mathematically eliminated from the playoffs, then that's crazy. It'll only take one more loss, is my guess at that point, because the Lions are 2-10 right now, if memory serves me right. But yeah, at some point you have to start playing the young guys. I've also noticed too they were rotating series for a bit there with Caillou Blue-Kelly and Darian Porter. That's another one that's just been a curious case because that seems like a Pete Carroll guy in every sense of the word. In Darian Porter, for whatever reason, he can't stay on the field. I got to go back and watch the film a bit more on him and see why he's not sticking out there longer. But Caillou Blue-Kelly gets a lot of burn there. Again, we talked to Max after the fact. Like I said, the question was, it's like, how frustrating is it when the offense isn't pulling their end of the bargain when you're playing good football on defense? Because, again, I do think they are playing winning football on defense. And he basically said, like, we can play better. And, yes, they can. Because, look, there's a 52-yarder that they gave up on that scramble play where Shedeur, they blitzed the house. Kudos to Patrick Graham. I think he had a great game plan for Shedeur Sanders. They brought the house with him, manned up, and Darnay Holmes just got beat on that one by Isaiah Bond. Good job by Shedeur escaping pressure to the right and just ripping that bomb to Bond there and giving him time to run under it and right there down on the goal line. Obviously, they go and score. And then there was that 66-yarder on that screen pass. Obviously, people are going to lose their minds when they go back and look at the stats for Shedeur. The stats on his don't, tell the whole story. And I'm not a Shedeur hater by any means. I think the Raiders should have taken a chance on him. You guys heard Antonio Pierce say that they were on him, that he wanted him. At that late in the game, why not take a chance on a guy like him late in the draft as possibly even a backup quarterback with Geno in-house, especially when everyone says that he was a pretty similar comp to Geno, and I know he and Geno have a relationship too. That was a head-scratcher to me. All that is in the past. You can't go and change that. So I just want to clarify that I'm not one of those people that's going to hate on Shedeur every time. Like, I'll give him his flowers. He figured out a way to win the game, played well enough to win the game. You could tell in Pete Carroll's answer when he was asked about assessing Shedeur's play, he said that scramble play to the right, that 52-yarder that he threw to Bond there, that was the play of the game. And I agree, one hell of a play by the Rook. But you could tell the way he was answering it, he knows Shedeur was not the difference in this one. The Raiders left a lot out on the table, in particular those deep shots overall. But again, you have to give kudos to Shedeur Sanders. I did think it was interesting, not to turn this into a Shedeur podcast here, but when they were down in the red zone, they switched to the Wildcat. They put Judkins in there, and they score on both of those plays. If you feel super comfortable about your quarterback, you're not going to leave him in there. You're not going to pull him out of there in the red zone like that at that kind of pace. Obviously, it works out for him. We know Kevin Stefanski loves to run the football, and boom, that's exactly what they were able to do. I actually didn't get a chance to look at the final numbers here for the running game as I look at it. So they only rushed for 64 yards. Quentin Judkins goes for 47 yards and 2 touchdowns. That was one of our keys to the game of needing to keep the Browns off balance. And, look, this is a game where there's 2 really bad offenses, and the Browns did just enough to be able to win. Obviously, they're given some short fields in this game by the Raiders' special teams, which is another thing that these special teams have been continued to be an Achilles heel for them. It's been a thorn in their side for so long, which is crazy when you look at the history of this franchise, at least since they've been in Vegas. Special teams has usually been pretty good for them. So that's been something that's been real wild to watch week in and week out for this team. On the punt there, obviously, AJ gets the tripping call as well, and then they get the ball in really good field position. In a game where you have 2 really bad offenses, you can't put your defense in a bind like that and give them a free one, because then, again, that lets them play so much more free, lets them run the football, lets them dink and dunk it. They don't really have to stress it, even though, again, they go and hit on 2 of those really big chunk plays, the 52-yarder there on third down again. I think that took some balls to call that with a rookie quarterback there on third down, but they knew they were going to blitz it. So overall, the story in this one, and we're not going to go crazy long on this one, guys, obviously, because I try not to ramble too far into so many of this one. But, again, the story in this one, obviously, is the offensive line and the fact that they miss opportunities on offense to go out there and make something happen. A couple of positives before we go and look forward to, like, what's next for the Raiders here. Snowden, man. Charles Snowden, he's had a couple big moments here at Allegiant Stadium over his career. Today comes through with a big pick there, dropping back in coverage. I thought it was great eyes by him. He's watching the back, peeks to the back, and then looks back to Shedeur read his eyes like a book, jumps right in front of that thing and takes off. I mean, you love that play by a guy in him who's an undrafted guy who's seen his ups and downs on this team, but he's shown up a lot. They very clearly like him. He's got a high motor. The guys in the locker room love him as well. Next series comes back with a TFL as well. So just impressed with Snowden, at times. Again, just need to see much more from this Raiders, line. Too. Let me go look at this and see the final stat total. Last time I checked, they only had 1 sack. And, they finished with 1 sack on the day. Again, this one's not on the defense. We talked about that. But this is a bad Browns offensive line. They came into this one giving up the 10th most sacks in the league. The Raiders get home on one of those. And I know the way that they were calling the game and all that stuff. Stefanski, like I said, real good play caller, getting the ball out of Shedeur's hand fast and moving around, all that stuff. But as a defensive line, you have to be able to get home more often. Again, we say it over and over again, Max needs more help. It can't always just be on Max. More of those guys need to step up consistently. We need to see the Snowdens more. Or at least it can't just be one other guy. You need like a couple of them, Adam Butler's had some moments. Let's see that pop up a bit more. And that can change some games, for the Raiders. Obviously, they go and they force 2 turnovers. But again, the offense just squanders those opportunities. I know it's frustrating for those dudes in the locker room. Each and every week, it's one of the toughest locker rooms to continue to walk back in there because it's just a demoralized group. And I know all of them, it's just like, man, each and every week, it's like one thing after another for them, no matter who it is that they're playing. And again, Shedeur, they go and do the unthinkable and they lose to him. Now he's the first Browns quarterback to win in their debut since like way back when. I know it was 17 of them. They were 0-17 as rookie starting quarterbacks in their first game. Shedeur now goes and wins his first one. And again, there's going to be a lot of people, and I'm not hating on him again. Some people might think that I am. There's going to be a lot of people talking about like, oh, he's the man, I think he should be QB1 for the Browns going forward. I think he played well enough, showed well enough in this game. The kid deserves a shot. Don't believe the whole stats. If you didn't watch this game or if you're just watching this recap, I think people need to dive into it a little more and watch the tape. The Browns made it easy on him, and there's 2 real big chunk plays. You take those away, it's a much different story for Shedeur. I think he played well. I don't think he played some absurd game or anything like that. And I think everybody with a level head can agree on that. But again, happy for him to be able to shut up a lot of the haters that were watching in this one, probably rooting for him to fail. It just sucks that it's at the Raiders' behalf that he goes and gets his first win, given the history and so many ties and all the talk that he was possibly going to come here in the draft. And obviously we all know that transpired and nothing comes up that. But again, back to the offensive line here, guys. And I feel like we talked about the O-line so much for this team, which is crazy. And I know this team has a history of offensive line play, but it's not the sexiest position to continuously talk about. But it is kind of crazy the way they've handled it all. Going back to the 10 sacks today, again, the 20 sacks in the last 3 weeks, it is not getting any easier for the Raiders going forward. They're taking on the Chargers this coming week here, Thanksgiving weekend. Who is that? Khalil Mack, another guy who has lit the Raiders up each and every chance he gets. Then they go to Denver, who they just gave up 6 sacks to a couple weeks ago. They've got Houston and Philly as well, so it ain't getting any easier for that offensive line. Again, when you give up a number like that, I don't know how something doesn't change for that group up front. Do they make a change on the coaching staff? Did young guys finally step up? I don't know. I'm real curious to see how the staff handles this thing going forward. If there is a switch that gets flipped where it's like, hey, we finally need to see something. But definitely one of those things where you sit in that press conference room and you wonder, there's going to be a lot of people on that Raiders staff, particularly on the offensive side, and even starting with the head coach, they're sitting there wondering if their jobs are safe going forward. I know fans are calling for them to move forward from them. For the longest time, I had said there's no way they get rid of Pete Carroll. But the conversation that I keep having with so many people is that, like, man, what can you point to that has gone well for them? What are things that they've built off of? Well, they're worse off than they were last year, and there's not a whole lot that you can point to in this one. So I wouldn't put it past them to move on from Pete. The only thing I can say is if you move on from him now, you run the risk of what we've seen in many recent years where the new coach comes in or an interim head coach comes in and all of a sudden there's new life injected into a team. They win some games and you miss out on a chance to eventually get your quarterback of the future. There's still a handful of games left. I've said it so many times. I don't like moving and talking about those things just yet. But, this is the reality of where things are at for the Raiders. So we'll sprinkle that in here and there. I do still want to stick on the season stuff and try and pull some positives wherever we can going forward or things to point to and look forward or what it means for them going forward. But again, at the end of the day, they really need to start looking forward and developing these young guys and figuring out what they have in so many of them going forward. For now, guys, that is going to do it for us. If you've made it this long, please do go check us out online at silverandblacksportsnetwork.com and subscribe to our free newsletter. Again, that drops on Mondays and Fridays. You guys know what it is. Tell your friends about it as well. On Monday, that one is more of a deep dive, a recap of the game that was, some of the interesting stats and takeaways, and more interviews from the locker room as well. And on Fridays, we get you ready for the game ahead, the keys to the game, and just the storylines kind of from the week that was leading up to kickoff for them. Anyway, guys, I hope you have a great Thanksgiving. Take a break, enjoy some other football, eat more than you can handle. I'm going to be heading out of town, so the next time you guys will see me throughout this week. I'll be recording some podcast episodes for the week of it. We did get things sorted out for those of you, again, just to update any of you guys. If you hadn't left just yet, I hope you're still listening to me. Apologies about the episode on Friday. It was a really good one. We actually brought Q Myers onto the show, and then we had our weekly roundup of Raiders Rounders with Matt Peralt, but we had audio issues. I have since sorted that out. I do have another mic on the way as well, so if something goes wrong, we'll make sure we fix that, but I couldn't release that one on Friday. My audio was just too bad. Everything was good on Q's front, but mine wasn't good, so we couldn't release that stuff today, or on Friday. But we'll be good to go going forward. Like I said, though, we'll see you again on Wednesday. Good podcast coming up. We're going to do a deep dive on the Chargers, preview that matchup, see where kind of both teams are. The Chargers are coming out of a bye, and what the Raiders got to do to kind of, again, just start to build off of something. I know a lot of you fans hoping they don't win any games to be able to preserve the draft pick. Totally get that. As a football fan myself, there were times when I thought that about the Bucs, where I was like, man, just keep losing so that you guys get a better draft pick. I totally understand that mindset. I just hate talking about it. You know what I mean? But anyway, guys, thanks again for listening, and we will catch you on Wednesday at our next podcast as we turn the page to that game against the Chargers. Again, Thanksgiving coming up in a couple weeks. I hope you guys enjoy your time with your friends and family, however you're celebrating. And as always, guys, thank you for watching and listening and all the support. It means a ton. We'll catch you later.